Hello, Year 6. It is Wednesday the 13th today, I do believe. And I just wanted to clear something up before we went into another maths lesson. I didn't want you to think that I hadn't changed my clothes this week, because I know you've been looking at me on a daily basis and I've been wearing exactly the same clothes here. I actually recorded these all in one day. So I don't want you to think that I've let my standards drop during the lockdown period and haven't been changing. I promise you, I recorded these all on one day. Anyway, now we've got that cleared up, perhaps I can get on with teaching you some maths today. So I'm just going to screen share so I can see what you'll be doing too. Make myself a bit bigger in the corner. You can all see that okay. Right, today we're going to carry on comparing and converting fractions into decimals. And today we're going to be looking at what would happen if you divided 1 by either 2 or 3 or 4, 5 even, what happens then? So in this representation here, you'll see we're using the Deans again because we're using this to represent 1. We're using the rod to represent 1/10 because it literally means 1 divided by 10. But what we're actually going to be doing here today is looking at how 1 divided by 2, y equals 0.5. So we're all happy that 1 divided by 2 equals a half, because that literally means 1 divided by 2, 2 parts, and the whole is 1. And what we've done here is we've got our 10/10, 1 equals 10/10 there, and we've split that, we divided that into 2 equal parts. So now we have 1 divided into 2 equal parts equals 5/10. If you were to write that as an equation, that would be 1 divided by 2 equals 5/10 as a fraction, which is equivalent to 0.5. If we were to simplify this fraction, 5/10, we would simply write it as we're familiar as 1/2. Right. The next stage I would like you to think about is looking at what would happen if we had 1 and we divided it by 4. So here again, we've got the Dean's block and we've split it into 4 equal parts, because we know when we're looking at decimals, that represents 1. One of those parts equals 100. The small part there equals 100. So if we have, in here, we have 100 hundredths, because we know 1 is equivalent to 100 hundredths. But as we can also see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters here. So 4 quarters is also equivalent to 1. If we looked at the same representation in terms of hundredths, what we have here is 1 quarter is equivalent to 25 hundredths. So that section in there is made up of 25 hundredths. We've got 5 rows of 5 hundredths, and 5 multiplied by 5 is 25, so that is 5 hundredths. So this literally means 1 divided by 4 is a quarter. 1 divided by 4 is a quarter, which is equivalent to 25 hundredths, and written as a decimal. If you were to convert that into decimals, it would be 0.25. The idea about those first 2 slides is that it's really to show you the visual representation, so you've got a good understanding of conceptually why these decimals and fractions are equivalent. The next slide is really, we've just put this in, we've put this table in just to go over with you these really key fraction equivalents, fraction and decimal equivalents, because these are the ones that you just need to know. You need to know them fluently, like you know your times tables, because these will crop up the whole time. And if you can know them and recognize them, it just makes a lot of your maths much easier. So we've looked at a half, we've looked at a quarter. In previous slides, we've looked at 1/5, why that is equivalent to 0.2. And of course, you're all very familiar with 1/10. So this is the one I want you to think about, 1/8. Why is 1/8 0.125? Think about the relationship between 1 quarter and 1/8, and therefore what the relationship is between 0.25 and 0.125. Next slide looks at fraction and decimal equivalents in the context of measure. We often jump in and out of both fractions and decimals when we're talking about measurements, and in this particular content we're talking about measure in terms of capacity for litres. So just have a look at that and familiarise yourself why these measurements are equivalent. As you can see here, we now know that 1/5 is equivalent to 0.2, therefore 3/5 is equivalent to 0.6. The following two slides, this is where you need to really just answer some questions. This first question here, we'd like you to copy and complete the table. You don't need to do this on the whole page. This will probably take up just about a quarter of the page. Make sure you write your headings in at the top here. And then this column here simply needs to be a decimal representation. This middle column here needs to be written as fractions, either as tenths or hundredths. And if possible here, we'd like you to simplify those fractions. And one example has been done for you, because 0.6 is a decimal, we know is equivalent to 6/10 written as a fraction. And if we were to simplify 6/10, we would write that as 3/5. This question here, again, just simply write these statements out on a piece of paper using the greater than or less than symbols, or of course equal symbols, just again as a revision about how these are equivalent. And your final question, some of you might remember this has actually come up in some SATs revision papers we've done before, but some of you found a little bit tricky. Adam says 0.25 is smaller than 2/5. Explain why he's correct. I'd like you to tell me all that you've learnt in the last few days in your answer here, because this really needs you to use a lot of mathematical language to answer this question. Right, well, that is your lesson for today. Good luck with getting on with this work. I know you'll all work very, very hard today, and I'll see you tomorrow.